and welcome to Pricing College with your hosts Joanna Wells
and Aidan Campbell.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about quite an unusual case study involving Coca Cola and apparent allegations of Coca Cola increasing prices when the weather gets hot.
So at the moment, today in Sydney is the first day of spring 2020, so we're very thankful for that, the weather finally heating up. But there is, whether it's an urban myth or a story, that there's not much evidence about, but that in the late 1980s, Coca Cola attempted to increase pricing, or at least test the increase of pricing for their products based on the temperature on that day. So a form of dynamic pricing based on ambient temperature. I suppose in today's podcast, we want to discuss, could that have worked? Would it have worked? And what should have been considered?
Yeah, let's think about it. You know, would you actually pay more for a can of Coke when it gets hot? Potentially. Let's think about it in terms of where you are. You know, are you in, say, for instance, a theme park? Are you with your kids? Are they demanding some Coca Cola? Maybe those are the instances where you go, do you know what? I would pay a bit more for a nice cold can of Coke. It'll keep everyone happy. We're thirsty. It gets the job done.
So I suppose in practical terms, obviously there's the operational aspect of this, and it really could only have worked in a theme park or in a vending machine system outside. So the machine must have had a temperature gauge and also had given Coca-Cola, the corporation itself, complete control over the pricing, the ability to set the pricing. Convenience stores, supermarkets, this couldn't have worked. So on paper, it does seem to be sensible. You know, when you think about it, at least at first inspection, when the temperature increases, you're walking around a lot, you're probably thinking, I'm getting dehydrated. I could do with a nice refreshing soft drink. That is the initial impression. Obviously, there's a lot more complexity to it that we really would need to dig through.
Yeah, like complexity about, evidence, price elasticity modeling, and connecting, that data on price and volume increases based on the weather would be quite difficult to track and monitor. So they need that sort of data-driven elasticity modeling occurring, but they'd also need information and surveys, consumer surveys, directly from people at that time, and connecting the two would be quite difficult, and getting that sort of price point based on that evidence. I'm not sure how possible that would be, really.
I really think my personal view is that if they did do these exams or this testing, it didn't work, because obviously we don't see this in operation, currently in 2020. So almost 30 years after this was supposed to have been experimented on. The other things I'll say is potentially when we think, yes, we would drink more when it's a hot day versus a cooler day. But the reality of it is you don't go to Disney World in, the middle of the Siberian winter. You go to Disney World in Florida, or I can't remember which is Disney World and which is Disneyland, but you go to these locations when it's nice weather, it's sunny, and it's quite warm. So you're already there on a good weather day. So the temperature differentiator will be small. I can potentially believe that you will consume more soft drinks. You're getting more dehydrated quickly when there's a temperature difference of 20 degrees. When there's a temperature difference of 3 degrees, 4 degrees, etc., it probably isn't statistically valid that you would drink that much more soft drink. And so that aspect of driving demand for the soft drinks, I personally think it's quite limited. The other thing I'll say is, let's be honest, the average person visiting Disneyland does not really have to be encouraged to consume. They're generally quite famous for consuming a lot of soft drinks and fast foods and those sort of things. I don't think there's ever been a major problem at these theme parks in not getting people to eat enough or drink enough, sugary products.
Yeah, and also at theme parks, I think there's like a price premium added just as you go in, walk through the theme park gates, and you go in there, you know that you're going to pay a price premium for every single thing that you buy up throughout the day, and people are sort of almost like not willing to pay those prices, but they acknowledge that will be the case. And then adding yet another premium on that just because it's hot. Maybe they did get some like elasticity data from that and just saw the volume actually drop off, and that's why they don't do it anymore. Who knows? There is a certain point that you can't go over, and maybe, you know, the weather was just, you know, people responded badly to that. So yeah, I at the same time, like Aidan said, I'm not sure that that is something, you know, that probably worked well for Coke. And also, let's think about it. You know, in theme parks, they tend to only sponsor maybe one or two, you know, products. I'd say Coke, or like for instance, they'd only sponsor, like one theme park would go for Pepsi, the other would go for Coke. So putting a premium on that when there's no alternative, you know, may not be a good idea either.
Yeah, I personally don't think you're going to be swapping between different brands, like increasing the price. I personally don't think that you know, the elasticity of demand will be hugely different, or I don't think there will be a great slope based on temperature. And certainly when it's in a certain bandwidth. I personally think people will consume roughly the same amount of beverage, and I think if you try to increase that price too much, I think you will probably decrease the demand for the drinks. People might go for, you know, just get one instead of two, might share one with the kids, etc. So my personal view is that it's probably isn't something that would have worked on initial inspection. It sounds good, but it's, I think what you're doing almost, you're taxing people for a driver of why you're purchasing the drink. So it's been sold as a refreshing product when you're thirsty. It's almost like you're penalising people for the value add. So I would almost see it as a marketing negative. I wouldn't see it as a, and certainly if people became aware of it, I think there could be bad marketing and reputational impacts from that. So, you know, Coca Cola, one of my favorite aspects of Coca Cola is they're often credited with being these marketing geniuses. And for anyone interested in that, there's a famous conspiracy theory about the new Coke conspiracy. We'll obviously not touch on that in this podcast. It's not a conspiracy theory podcast, but it's a very interesting one from a marketing perspective. And we'd be interested to know if people believe it's true or not. So yeah, that's all from me today on the Coke and temperatures.
Yeah, thanks a lot.